This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. No choice but to get on. Mandate, get it on. And welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark. Hard out. Limited window. Garrigus.
You know, I was just telling Gary I've really earned my moniker as hard out, but it autocorrects to hard put. And so I wonder if there's a lesson to be learned there. I'll leave it to you to analyze it with your crystal brain.
Mark's at his home office, and I guess first in the unfinished business department, Paul Pelosi.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm dealing with that I was dealing with this morning. I haven't gotten to where I need to be yet. There is another matter that I'm trying to resolve, and it may happen during this half hour. And it involves Daniel Shaver in that case as well. So as soon as I get somebody texts me, I can let our listeners know that first off.
That was the Arizona very bad cop shooting case. Was it Arizona or New Mexico?
Arizona.
Arizona.
Right.
Also, I heard that your firm is representing the guy who evidently fell asleep at the wheel and plowed through the police cadets.
That's Alexandra is representing him, and in fact, so far he has not been filed on. It appears that it's a tragic, horrible accident.
It didn't. It made the rounds, but it didn't really make the rounds because if a policeman shoots a black kid, it makes the rounds. But when the police get mowed over by an SUV, for some reason, we're not outraged as a society. Nobody could figure out the guy's motive. And then I heard yesterday that it was early morning, and evidently he fell asleep at the wheel. At least that's the latest one. And I thought that makes sense because it wasn't some sort of activist or militant guy or cop hater or Black Lives Matter, so-and-so. He just seemed like a young guy who's driving an SUV who inexplicably plowed into some police cadets going on an early morning jog, and it didn't make sense as to why he would do that. But the falling asleep at the wheel does make sense.
Yeah, and he comes from a law enforcement family, the correctional officers, and I think there's even a picture that Alexandra has located, or that was located, that shows him with the other members of the family who are all law enforcement. I mean, it's just a tragedy. You just hope there's somebody who's still, I think, critically injured, and there's been some other injuries, and just want to, it reminds me of what I always say to you about the social contract when you're walking, because I spend so much time on the streets, the hard scrabble streets of La Cañada, that you have to hope that the social contract is such that nobody clips you as you're walking along the road, right? With no sidewalks or anything else.
Yeah, I told you, although it's been a long time, and I can't remember if I shared this story with you, but I was walking right at the intersection where you and I often cross paths, right closest to your house at night with Phil, some years ago, in front of the big sort of French chateau house that's also across from the world's biggest vacant lot, which is now going to have a McMansion on it. And a cop car at 9 at night, sheriff pulled up facing me on the wrong side of the street, jumped out of his car, pumped the shotgun, faced it toward me, and started running at me. I want everyone to know I didn't. I literally just put my hands out as wide as I could get them. I didn't put them up. It seemed like too much movement, or I just didn't want that effect. I literally just made an iron cross and stopped with my hands as wide as I could as the guy ran at me with a shotgun. I don't know why he needed to point it at me, and I don't know why he needed to pump it right in front of me. But
I don't know what the pump is. I would imagine that your blood goes cold when you hear that sound.
He pumped it, but he didn't keep it up. He pumped it, and then he turned it down by his hip, pointed at me, and started running at me from about 25 feet away. I just stopped and put my hands out as wide as I could, and then he ran right past me. I want to say this to law enforcement. Don't be annoyed at citizens that are going about their business because you happen to run into them. He ran at me and just yelled, "Get out of here!" And as he blew right past me, because evidently somebody had called in something on the French Chateau house and said there's, active something going on over there. Never got to the bottom of it. But in more recent news, I know there's a lot of stuff you want to talk about. And the Paul Pelosi thing, what is that? What's your involvement?
Well,
what can you give us?
I wish I finalized it, and I haven't yet. So I've got to demur. And Gary had told me I was going to pay the price with you if I hadn't done it in time, but I haven't done it in time.
But you will be involved in some way.
It sure looks that way. I'll leave it at that.
All right. So we have some footage, which I think is interesting, which is something that I've been on for a long time, which is the FBI informants, FBI embedded. It started with the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. Started off as a bunch of radical white supremacists. We're going to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and then it turned into more of an FBI plot to enlist guys to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. This is Higgins, I think, who's from Louisiana. He's asking Christopher Wray, FBI leader, about embedment of FBI into Proud Boys and Oath Keepers for January 6th, because there's two stories. They're the ones that the media pushes forward and the narrative that they push forward, and then there's the truth, which is the FBI is involved with a lot of this stuff, with informants and personnel that they embed. And then the question becomes, are they passive or are they instigators? But we'll play you FBI head Christopher Wray in front of Clay Higgins being grilled about that.
Does the FBI have confidential human sources? Did the FBI have confidential human sources embedded within the January 6th protesters on January 6th of 2021?
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources. But to the extent that there's a suggestion, for example, that the FBI's confidential human sources or FBI employees in some way instigated or orchestrated January 6th, that's categorically false.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being open?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no. Can you not tell the American people no? We did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol.
Gentleman's time has expired.
You should not read anything into my decision not to share information.
Director Wray,
confidential human
gentleman's
sources.
time has expired.
By the way, the guy who's telling them their time has expired is the guy who's running the January 6th. But let me just say this about January 6th, everybody. There is a plethora of things that you're not hearing about that do not support the narrative of the bloody insurrection. First off, there's the whole pipe bomb thing that they don't discuss ever, which means I want to discuss it now. There was a pipe bomb that was allegedly discovered outside of the DNC headquarters. There was where was Kamala Harris? First, they said she was in the Capitol for the first year, and then they said she was at the headquarters of the DNC. They've never caught the guy who planted the bomb, which was a false bomb, but they're not interested in the narrative of a bomb attack. at the DNC, which is interesting to me that that's not part of their narrative. Then there's the whole FBI embedded informants. Then there's the whole thousands of hours of videotape from inside the halls that they're not releasing. So there's a lot more going on with that event than meets the eye.
Well, I think that we've discussed before that the problem you have, and we gave it as kind of coming attractions, whoever's in charge is going to kind of run their narrative, if you will. One of the great things about trials, and one of the reasons that trials are usually so effective, is that you have two adversaries who are both putting forth the evidence as they see it or know it. If you have a potted plant on one side, or you don't have, or you're gaming the system, so to speak, you're not going to actually get at the truth. And the way to get at the truth is to have advocates on opposing sides who are bringing up evidence, who are using evidence. Now, Christopher Wray and the FBI, and I've run into this in countless situations where they will invoke the confidential human privilege, right? Or the say in California, in the state side, under 1040 or 1041, and say, we can't reveal that. We can't do this. We can't do that. Well, yes, you can. And there are exceptions, and those exceptions probably could be met. And so you should get, I mean, it's a fair question 2 years later. And unfortunately, we're going to get to it 2 years later, where we would have probably gotten to it a lot sooner if there'd just been a distribution initially on that committee. If there had been people who had different viewpoints as opposed to everybody having a uniform viewpoint. You know what I mean? It was kind of like stacking the deck. And that you're never going to get, in my humble opinion, you're going to get a one-sided, non-adversarial production that doesn't get at all of the other, sometimes the truth is not pretty, but that doesn't mean that you just kind of sweep it under the rug. What you should do is you should cross-examine people. You should call them up there. You should get various voices. That's what trials are for. And unfortunately, what I think you're going to find now is for the next 2 years, we're going to get another version, and it's going to be completely at odds with the version that we've been listening to.
Well, I agree. And it's something that comes up quite often where people go, this side's got an agenda and that side's got an agenda. And that's true. They both have an agenda. They both have agendas. But then there's something called the truth. And just because you got an agenda and I got an agenda doesn't mean the truth isn't somewhere crawling and working around our agendas. I mean, 10 minutes ago, CBS is now talking about Hunter Biden's laptop being verified. And it's like, yeah, Fox had Tony Bobulinski being interviewed. Fox was talking about the authenticity of it 2 years ago. They have an agenda. The Fox had an agenda as it pertained to COVID. CNN had an agenda as it pertained to COVID. And then you can kind of argue that, well, both sides have an agenda. That's true. But there's also, does the laptop exist? What was on the laptop? Was closing schools a good idea? Was closing outdoor dining a good idea? Was closing the beaches a good idea? That's the truth. Now, someone's going to win that argument, and someone's side will have an agenda attached to that argument. When you defend a client, you have an agenda. The prosecution has an agenda. But that can't just be, well, of course Mark says this, and of course the prosecutor says that. It's flip a coin. No, your guy killed somebody or he didn't kill somebody, and that's going to be the truth.
Right. And that's the whole idea of an adversarial system. And by the way, that's supposed to be what happens in Congress. It's supposed to be what happens in the political sphere. You just don't have an amen choir, no matter which side you're on. And I don't like I said, it's so predictable that we're here and where we're going to be, and it didn't have to be.
Well, Ray answered those questions. Christopher Wray answered those questions like he knew there were FBI guys embedded in that group, right?
Yeah, I mean, he could have. I don't know anything about the guy who was asking the questions. All I know is that he did. It was not a bad cross-examination, although you could argue that it's objectionable because it assumes facts, not in evidence. But the problem with that is that you can't have answering that question does not jeopardize any of the facts, and in fact, probably should have been disclosed to the defense, anybody who's defending a January 6th defendant, because if that's part of your defense that the law supports it, that needs to be disclosed. You can't just say that threatens our methods or threatens this or that without any counterbalance of whether or not it also helps somebody whose liberty is at stake.
All right. What other stories did you have queued up, Gary, that Mark wanted to get into?
Well, right now I'm reading a breaking story that the Supreme Court has cleared the way for Trump's tax returns to go to the Congressional Committee. That's literally in the past 30 seconds or so. So I'm still reading on that one. We have this.
By the way, on that one, once again, I'm going to come to their defense because you never remember the first story, and I believe it was Clarence Thomas, and he had pressed pause, and then the full court ended up setting it aside, and you got very little. Nobody kind of picked up on that because it didn't fit the narrative that everybody wanted out there. This was the same thing. It's interesting that once again, the chief has a certain circuit that he deals with. He had pressed pause for the full court, and apparently, if Gary is reading or getting an accurate breaking news, I wonder if this will be covered as breathlessly as it was when he pressed pause. You know what I mean? Once again, this idea that if you don't know how the system works, you can always attribute a false narrative to it.
Sorry, Gary. What else did you have there?
Yeah, so that one is in fact breaking. I'm getting multiple alerts on it. We also have we've got stories about the Supreme Court. Mark, what are you excited about? We've also got the Theranos.
It's the Theranos. We had talked before about the sentencing. It seems like a pretty stiff sentence for her under the guidelines, and the private. She got, I believe, 11 years.
Is that the Molotov cocktail thrower?
No. Theranos is the blood thing. Elizabeth Holmes, who always wore the black turtlenecks and was the next Steve Jobs. Oh,
that one.
Yeah. So she was sentenced to 11 and a quarter years, I believe. And she's currently pregnant with her second child. So that's pretty tough.
And I've got to tell you, one of the things that I thought that was compelling about the defense, obviously it didn't carry the day with the jury, but I always thought it was compelling that it wasn't like it was a pump and dump. I mean, she wasn't, by all accounts, she truly believed in what she had, to the point where obviously the jury thinks that she must have been delusional at some point. But she didn't unload shares. She didn't cash in at any point. And that lack of motive, even though you don't have to prove motive if you're the prosecution, I always thought that was a pretty compelling defense, and I'm just surprised that she's ended up where she's ended up after all this time. I thought there would be more to the defense in this case, or it would have been more compelling to the jurors, which goes back.
She should have hired you. All right. Gary, tease one and I'll do a spot. Let's see.
Yeah, we've got a story coming out of the Supreme Court where there's allegations of leaked decisions. Decisions that are coming down the pike months in advance, and that is getting into the hands of influential donors. Let's just say.
All right, let me tell you about Roman. Almost half of men experience moderate to extensive hair loss in their lifetime. There are a lot of options available to help stop balding. And they'll stop it in its tracks, but you got to get on it. Roman, clinically proven prescription medication and over-the-counter treatments all from the comfort and privacy of your own home. Plus, specially formulated shampoos and conditioners that fortify and moisturize hair to look fuller. Just complete a free online visit. A U.S. licensed healthcare professional will help you find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman ships direct in discreet packaging with free 2-day shipping. Starts at $20 per month, and they have on a quarterly plan, I should say, but it's worth it to keep your hair. It's Roman, right, Gary? That is right. Right now, Roman has a special offer just for our listeners. Use this link to get 20% off your first order. Just go to ro.co/doubt today. That's ro.co/DOUBT for 20% off. All right, so there's leaks coming out of the Supreme Court. So obviously the big one was that Roe v. Wade was pretty much leaked, that was going to happen a few weeks, if not months, before it actually came to pass. And now a reverend has come out and stated that he was given a similar preview to a 2014 case, which you're familiar with. It was the Hobby Lobby case. Yeah.
And he said that was at dinner with Justice Alito and his wife, correct?
Correct, and a few other high-end, donors in the Republican Party, apparently.
Apparently, there's a movement, so to speak. There has been a movement, if you believe any of this stuff, about having these large donors mingle, socialize, and kind of reinforce, if you will, the conservative viewpoints of these justices on the U.S. Supreme Court, which, I'm of two minds when it comes to that. Number one is, yes, I can see where somebody would be saying that or would think that would carry the day. On the other hand, I also wonder if that isn't just somebody humoring their donors into thinking that they're actually more important than they really are.
Broadly speaking, the latest scam of the billionaire boys club guy with the crazy hair, has 5 names.
SBF?
Yes. Just the notion that people give bundles of money to one party or the other, and one candidate or the other without expecting anything in return is kind of insane. How else could it go? If you're making a decision on whether to regulate Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or whatever it is, and then somebody drops off a pile of money, how many steps before we get to bribery? I mean, it's a bizarre policy. People don't like the lobbyists. They don't like, on both sides. They don't want big oil, giving lots of money to Republican senators. They don't want other groups on the other side of the aisle. The teachers' unions. How fucked are we with the teachers' unions?
How about in California, the correctional officers union?
Yes, we live in California. The teachers unions give bundles of money to the Democrats. Then the teachers unions announce they want the schools closed down, so they close down the schools. And then at some point, the governor says, well, maybe we should reopen the schools. And the teachers union go, not so fast. You better rethink that. Is that not pay for play? Is that not bribery? And who's suffering here? The teachers' unions don't have to go back to work. They get to make policy. Gavin Newsom gets his coffers filled with money from the teachers' unions. But I got 2 kids who want to go to fucking school. So where do I end up in this equation? Why is this okay? I don't get why this is okay on either side of the aisle. It should be put to bed. I mean, it shouldn't even be regulated. There just shouldn't be, unions, especially unions that are, air traffic controllers or prison guards or cops or firemen or teachers, should not be able to give money to candidates. It doesn't serve the people.
It's a bizarre system. In fact, speaking of the U.S. Supreme Court, they always have to go back and take a look at honest services fraud and the whole idea of where is the line, so to speak, on corrupting a public servant, because at a certain point you have to draw that line, because what is legal and what is a novel theory, that line gets very fuzzy. And you've exactly put out there, if they're giving the money and consistently giving the money, are they giving it because this is the candidate who they agree with, they like this guy's positions, or is the money the impetus for this guy or woman's positions? You know what I'm saying? And that's that fine line that you're trying to navigate to say whether or not it's corrupt or not.
Well, you're affecting policy, essentially. We had, during COVID, the teachers' unions were setting policy. That's not what they're there for. And that's what's inevitably going to happen. And look, it may start off with the best of intentions, which is, well, we like this guy's stance on X, Y, and Z, so we'll give him some money. But it'll quickly devolve into you calling shots, essentially, because it has to. That's the only way, that's the only direction it can go. You're giving him gobs of money. You're going to want some input, just like if you're the guy who just, with the cryptocurrency, you're not going to give gobs of money to people without, you're a business. You don't give gobs of money to people without them doing something that benefits you. Otherwise, you will stop. That's how business works. So the system is inherently flawed, and somebody should take a look at it, and we should put an end to it, because you have Roberta Weingarten or Weintraub or whatever her name is, crazy coos from the teachers union, calling shots for as if she's a virologist as to whether schools can open or not. I don't want that. I'm always curious why they're so visible about it too. They're kind of, Randy Weingarten. They're brazen about it. She's getting in front of the cameras and grabbing the microphone and laying policy down, even when the CDC and the governor wants to go against it. They're overriding. Well, they're telling the CDC to change their policy so that their employees don't have to go back to work. It's an insane premise that we all just kind of signed off on, or we just kind of keep walking. But it'd be nice if it ended. I think both sides of the aisle would like it to end. Your average Republican and your average Democrat would like it to end. Your average Democrat would like to do away with big oil and big energy in their lobbying department, and the average Republican would like to do away with the teachers' unions and their lobbying.
I don't disagree. I think that's been part of the problem with all of the money being speech and the kind of how that's morphed into the dark money. But that's a whole nother episode.
All right, Gary, do you have one more legal case out there?
Well, I just want to put a button on what you were talking about, because I'm seeing Sam Bankman-Fried focused on a lot, and how he was the second biggest donor to the Democratic Party. You've seen that, reported. What I've seen reported way less is that his lieutenant, one of his number twos, was the second leading donor to the Republicans and gave $40 million to them.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, because they're trying to get crypto regulated in a way they want. They want, they're trying to get stuff done. They're operating in the Bahamas for a reason. It's not been settled law here in America. So, everyone's reporting he's giving to the Democrats. No, they're giving gobs of money to anyone who will take it, because they're trying to get their business regulated in the way they want.
It's such a good point, because the regulation is everything. You can regulate it out. You can go back on these new kinds of things, whether it was Napster way back when, and how that morphed, and then Apple took over and basically what Napster was doing, but made it legal and cut the bigger deals. Whichever side comes and regulates this and regulates it in the way that they want is going to have the next biggest fortunes that are going to be made and lost.
All right. Sorry. One more, Gary.
All right, one last story. A judge has ruled that Jen Psaki can be deposed in a lawsuit over alleged collusion between big tech and the government to censor speech.
This is I think it was on a motion to compel because she had declined. And by the way, this will be very interesting because she's made some statements, and I think these were used against her about the meetings themselves. And so now they're going to be able to plumb that and see what was said, when was said, and then get the surrounding information. It really is quite a legal feat. This is part of the discovery process, as you and I have talked about so often. That's when the things get interesting.
Well, there is no doubt that the government and big tech were colluding to set a narrative for COVID. And there's no doubt they have the paperwork. Guys like Alex Berenson, guys I listened to during COVID, with specifically being brought up and the Biden administration saying, we got to shut this guy down or we got to get after him. There's Fauci emails. There's going to be there is a paper trail. A whole bunch of shit's going to come out with Fauci, and a whole bunch of shit's going to come out between the government and big tech and a narrative. And there's people that are going to have grievances, and probably someone's going to cut a check or two, I think, because they are taking people's reputation and livelihood and destroying them because they are coming out with a narrative that didn't jibe with the official government narrative, whether it was vaccines or masks or reopening schools or social distancing or all the shit they were wrong about. They actually actively went after people. And this kind of dovetails in a weird way with the whole FBI situation in January 6th, and then the FBI sort of deep sixing the Hunter Biden laptop story and all of it. It's essentially, do you want the government colluding with big tech to propose things that are a narrative that benefits them? Now, it could be Hunter Biden's laptop being Russian collusion, or it could be, here's what we want you to do as it pertains to COVID. And then do you want the FBI working with the administration and essentially doing their bidding, or at least helping push along a narrative that the administration has put forward? And if the answer is no, then you should be interested in these cases. Now, did it happen? 100%. Abso-fucking-lutely. I've known about this for 2 years. Look, CBS 10 minutes ago said the Hunter Biden laptop was real. Of course, I knew about it 2 years ago. That everything will take the same trajectory. All the shit that was conspiracy theory, all the stuff, all the people that were thrown off of Twitter, all the nut jobs on the cable stations on the right, it'll all come to fruition. It's all there. It's just, do they want to dig it up or not? Fauci shall be revealed. The FBI shall be revealed. The administration dealing with Twitter and Facebook and big tech, that shall all be revealed as well. It all happened. That much is clear at this point. The question now is how much of it happened.
Well, you wait and see. We're going to have investigation layered upon investigation. Like I said before, it's why we should have had a more adversarial process.
Yeah. Well,
we just can't outsource this to one side or the other, because you're going to get to a point where you wonder how you were intellectually betrayed.
All right. So last but not least, there's Geico. Do you rent your home? Well, sure you do. And it can be hard work. Well, I'll tell you what's easy. Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. So go to geico.com, get a quote, and see just how much you could save and just how easy it is to save with Geico. All right, I'm going to be at the Rialto Theater in Tucson, Arizona, coming up the 15th of December, doing a stand-up show there. Also then heading off to Tempe, Arizona, to the Tempe Improv. You can go to adamcarolla.com for all that. That's the 15th and 16th. And then Working Blue with John Popper. That's coming up January 20th through the 22nd, Dallas, Texas. So you can just go to adamcarolla.com for all the live dates. What do you got, Mark?
Well, if you're down in Palm Springs, stop by Gigi's. They've got quite a product down there that they're putting out. If you're in the New York, to go by Grand Central, see Prova, or say hi to Jake over at Dirty Taco. And if you're in LA, Engine Company 28 or 10E, Mediterranean Tapas.
So, till next time, this is Adam Carolla for Mark, Hard Out, Limited Window, Garrigus, saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.